بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. As we continue in the explanation of Hamawiyyah or Fataawa Hamawiyyah al-Kubra with the great Imam Taqiyuddin Ahmad ibn Abdul Halim ibn Abdul Salam ibn Taymiyyah al-Harwani al-Dimashqi rahimahullah المتوفى سنة 728 رحمه الله وأعظم أجره وقدس روحه وأدخله فسيح جناته آمين. As we continue with the explanation of Fatwa al-Hamawiyyah al-Kubra by the great Imam, the time now is 8 o'clock p.m., Thursday, March the 3rd, 2022, where the night, technically, according to the Islamic calendar, is Friday. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, everyone, it's the first of Sha'ban. It's the first of Sha'ban, the month before the blessed month of Ramadan, in which you'll find, if like I said, just to check the times just to be certain, but as far as I know, it's the first of Sha'ban, the year of Sana 1443, the year 1443, after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. We discussed the affairs of Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah. They were speaking about the three groups that had broken down. Number one was Ahl al-Takhyir, the people of imaginations, we discussed. Then we talked about Ahl al-Ta'wil. Ahl al-Ta'wil was the second. We said Ahl al-Ta'wil, the people of distortions, the people of misinterpretations, those who misinterpret the verses in the Book of Allah. So the source of deviance amongst the Muslims all returns back, of course, to corrupt fundamentally, and their misinterpretation of the verses of the Book of Allah. Your father, Shaykh al-Islam, described that here. He said the second is Ahl al-Ta'wil, those who misinterpreted the verses in the Book of Allah, and likewise the authentic Sunnah. However, before that, the problem returned back to the affair connected with the principles, where they made, like we said, philosophy and other affairs a source of guidance over what, everyone? The revelation. Over the revelation. This is what we mentioned. But just to return back, so we want to take advantage of the time. So Shaykh al-Islam says Ahl al-Ta'wil was the second group. Then you have Ahl al-Tajheel. Ahl al-Tajheel, people who declared the message of Allah sallallahu of deficiencies in his knowledge, and those who also declared the message of Allah sallallahu basically of jahl. يتهمون النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بالجهل, those who accuse the message of Allah of ignorance. Because if the message of Allah sallallahu if they believe that the message of Allah was complete in his knowledge as far as in regards to his Lord, they would not choose as a source of guidance from their minds or their intellects or anything else other than restricting themselves to the revelation, as we discussed. So that's the reason why we'll discuss in a minute. It's all going to become clear why Shaykh al-Islam entitled them or called them Ahl al-Tajheel, the people who declared the message of Allah of ignorance. That's what Tajheel means. يجهلون علم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ويرمونه بالجهل, those who accuse the message of Allah of ignorance. All that's going to come in a minute. However, what I want everyone to be attentive of, even though Shaykh al-Islam broke him down into these three categories, his main category who he wanted to focus on out of all the three were the people of Ta'wil, the people of misinterpretations, meaning those who twisted the meanings of the verses of the Book of Allah, and in addition to that, or especially the names and the attributes of Allah, those who distorted their meanings. The topic of this whole book, rather the affair of this book, revolves around what? Those who distort the meanings of the names and the attributes of Allah. So that is the main focus of all the categories that we're mentioning right now. So even though he named those three, however, his focus was on specifically the people of Ta'weel, the people of distorted meanings or false interpretations, or if you want to say, misinterpretations of the Book of Allah Ta'ala, and also the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. All of that will come in a minute. So let's go back to the book of what he says, rahimahullah. He says, وَأَمَّا أَهْلُ التَّأْوِيلِ فَيَقُولُونَ إِنَّ النُّصُوصَ الْوَارِدَةَ فِي الصِّفَاتِ لَمْ يَقْصِدْ بِهَا الرَّسُولُ صلى الله عليه وسلم أن يعتقد الناس الباطل ولكن قصد بها معاني ولم يبين لهم تلك المعاني ولا دلهم عليها ولكن أراد أن ينظروا فيعرف الحق بعقولهم. We already mentioned this yesterday. He said that those for the people of misinterpretations, the people of ta'weel, of false interpretations, he said they say, verily the authentic text, whether it be the kitab, the book of Allah, or the authentic sunnah, that have been reported in regards to the names or the attributes of Allah, that the message of Allah did not intend it, in which the people, if they believed it or firmly believed it in their hearts, they have what? Attained a false meaning. Meaning what the message of Allah taught them, if the people would have believed that truly, it would have been falsehood that they would have believed. However, now listen, however, what the messenger intended was meanings, other ones. He said that he did not clarify for them those meanings. So we said that these matters all goes back to what Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah said a couple of lessons ago, maybe 2 or 3 lessons ago, where we said that the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam, as we know, he had these titles, such as saying, أَدَّى الْأَمَانَةِ وَنَصَحَ الْأُمَّةِ وَنَصَحَ وَغَفَّ بِالْأَمَانَةِ وَنَصَحَ الْأُمَّةِ وَلَمْ يَكْتُمْ شَيْئًا مِنَ الْعِلْمِ الَّذِي أُنزِلَ عَلَيْهِ. We know from the meanings that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or the titles he was given, number 1, كَانَ أَكْمَلُ الْخَلْقِ عِلْمًا بِاللَّهِ. We believe that the Messenger of Allah was the most completest of the creation in his knowledge in regards to Allah. That's what a Muslim has to believe. Number 1. Number 2, every Muslim who believes, or they say, Muhammadur Rasulullah, believes that the Messenger of Allah fulfilled his trust he was given. As far as what, everyone? Of delivering and saying and conveying everything of the knowledge he was given. He did not keep anything secret. Alayhi salatu wasalam. If he would have kept anything secret, that means he betrayed his what? His trust. Khan al-risala. إذا كتم شيء خان الرسالة. If he had kept something secret, that means he was what? Treacherous as far as his conveyment of the message. Right, everyone? We also said that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was the most greatest of advisors for this ummah. So those are the things we mentioned a couple of lessons ago. Just a couple of lessons ago we mentioned that. But anyway, notice Shaykh al-Islam brought that for a reason. Because the belief of the people of false interpretations is what he's saying here. He's saying everything that they're saying goes against those principles. He said, those meanings the Messenger of Allah did not clarify. So if he didn't clarify, that means he what? Kept something hidden. And not only did he keep it hidden, he kept it hidden in the most important of all knowledge, which is the knowledge connected with our Lord, which is the greatest of all knowledge. So, this is what they're going to say. وَلَا دَلَّهُمْ عَلَيْهَا. Nor did he indicate that. So he didn't teach them that, he didn't clarify it, nor did he bring any indication. However, what he wanted for the people is to look and realize the truth by their intellects. Realize the truth by your what? Your minds. He's saying using the minds as a what, everyone? As a foundation over what? Revelation. That's the issue. That's the problem. Is to take the aql as a what? As a masdar of hidayah. Ala al-wahy. هذه هي البلية. That is the atrocity that emanates from here. Is it clear, everyone? That one would make the mind as a what? Source of guidance over? That's the problem. So that's what Shaykh al-Islam is mentioning here. He said what they say, the people of Tawil, he said, ثم يجتهدوا في صرف تلك النصوص, we're going to mention this here, عن مدلولها ومقصوده امتحانهم وتكليفهم وتعاب أذهانهم وعقولهم في أن يصرفوا كلامه عن مدلوله ومقتضاه ويعرف الحق من غير جهته. هذه بلية أخرى. He said that the people, after they realized the truth by their intellects, that they work hard in taking those meanings outside what they indicate, meaning of what is apparent, an apparent meaning, taking the apparent meaning and taking it away. And rather, when the Messenger of Allah did that, when he conveyed it in this way, meaning with the apparent meaning, his intention was just to test the people and to burden them and to render their minds weary and exhausted, and likewise their intellects. He said, until they take the speech of Allah or the speech of the Messenger of Allah away from what those meanings indicate and what they necessitate. So they know the truth from other than the direction of Him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Is there anyone that can know the truth of Allah other than another way of wahi and from other than the Messenger of Allah? There isn't any way. And if a Muslim believes that, we know that is what? That's disbelief. Because all of our guidance and why we're guided as Muslims, all because we take it from what? What has been derived directly from the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah. Fine. He said at the end, this is the statement of al-mutakallimat al-jahmiyah wal-mu'tazila وَمَنْ دَخَلَ مَعَهُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ مِّنْ ذَلِكَ. This is the statement of the Jahmis, who have been affected by the knowledge of rhetoric, and the Mu'tazila, and those who enter upon a way of anything of the sort. Fine, so let's keep going, because that's what we already mentioned yesterday. This right here is very important, that we're going to speak about. How Shaykh al-Islam talks about the history of how all the books that Allah revealed, revealed that the Quran was the most detailed about the affairs of the hereafter. However, all the books agreed about the names and attributes of Allah, from the Torah, from the Injil, and the Quran. And that you'll find that Shaykh al-Islam is going to mention a very important point. He said that none of the people of the nations of the past never denied any of the meanings of the names and attributes of Allah. They didn't find any distortion in regards to those names and attributes. He said, you're going to find that, he's going to mention this. He's going to mention a very important point here. So let's read. وَالَّذِينَ قَصَدْنَا الرَّدَّ عَلَيْهَا فِي هَذِهِ الْفُتْيَا هُمْ هَؤُلَاءِ إِذْ كَانَ نُفُورُ النَّاسِ عَنِ الْأَوَّلِينَ مَشْهُورًا بِخِلَافِ هَؤُلَاءِ فَإِنَّهُمْ تَظَاهَرُوا بِنَصْرِ السُّنَّةِ في مواضع كثيرة وهم في الحقيقة لا للإسلام نصروا ولا للفلاسفة كسروا ولكن أولئك الفلاسفة ألزموهم في نصوص المعاد نظير ما ادعوه في نصوص الصفات فقالوا لهم نحن نعلم بالاضطرار أن الرسل جاءت بمعاد الأبدان وقد علمنا الشبه المانعة منه. Now this is what he goes on to say. And this clarifies what I said a couple of minutes ago. He says, who we intended to refute and who we intended to rebuttal in this futya, in this book, Al-Hamawiyyah, are these people. Who's he talking about? Who? I just said it. The people of Ta'wil. Not just Kalam, them too. But here in this context, he's talking about here Ta'wil, the people of Ta'wil or Tahrif, the people of what? Misinterpretation or distorted meanings. That's who he's speaking about here in this context. He said, Hum ha'ula. He says, إِذْ كَانَ نُفُورُ النَّاسِ عَنِ الْأَوَّلِينَ مَشْهُورًا. He said, Ahl Ta'wil, he is the one that he mainly wants to put his focus on. Even though the people of imagination and the people of Tajheel, who declared the message of Allah with ignorance, also fall into that. But however, what he really wanted to make his focus on was them. Is it clear, everyone? So this is what he goes on to say. He says, إذ كان نفود الناس عن الأولين مشهورا. Now he's talking about the first group again. He's saying about the people of imagination, or the people who are delusional, and the people who ascribe ignorance to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, or deficiency in the Messenger of Allah's knowledge. Those people, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, when person is saying, right now, if any Muslim who has any type of sense of education of their religion, if they was to hear out of a Muslim's mouth saying, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was ignorant, or the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, his knowledge in regards to Allah was deficient, or if they was to say that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ came with meanings, rather, we know people that did not need the Sunnah. Rather, we know people that surpassed it and reached levels in which they do not need a mediator, such as Jibreel, in order to attain knowledge from Allah Ta'ala. Rather, they can exceed the limits where they can look directly in the preserved tablet and extract knowledge from it. Any Muslim in any sense that have the slight of education will flee away from them. And then know that this individual has what? Lost their minds. Or that individual has truly what? Or is truly ignorant also. So that's what Shaykh al-Islam is saying here. He said the first category were the people of takhyir, and the third category, the people who ascribe ignorance to the Messenger of Allah. He says, إِذْ نُفُوسَ النَّاسِ عَنِ الْأَوَّلِينَ مَشْهُورًا. He said, hence, as far as the first category he's speaking about, the people of imagination, that the people fleeing away from this type is known. Is it clear what he's saying now? إِذْ كَانَ نُفُودُ النَّاسَ عَنْهُ مَشْهُورًا. He said the Muslims what? Those especially who are educated and those who know their religion and they are well fundamentally sound, when they hear this nonsense, they're going to know automatically what? These are absolute clear ignorance. This is absolute clear errors. That they will flee away from these type of people and not take knowledge from them, nor would they accept them as a person that is so-called upon sound understanding in regards to the religion. Fine. So he said that these type of people, it's known of that how the Muslims who truly have understand the affair will flee away from them. However, what he was saying, mentioned, it said, إِذَنْ الَّذِينَ تَطْمَئِنُّ إِلَيْهِمْ نُفُوسَ النَّاسِ نَوْعًا مَا هُمْ أَهْلُ التَّأْوِيلِ. He said the problem is that the people in the second category, who are the people of distorted meanings, they were the ones you'll find that the majority of the Muslims had some type of what? Had some type of belief in and founded them to deem them to be the people of the truth. That's the reason why his main focus was on who? The people of Ta'wil. Why? That's to show the intelligence of the people of knowledge, that they look to what is the most greatest danger or has the greatest impact in its magnitude upon the aqeedah of the Muslims, because Shaykh al-Islam realized that the most greatest of all affairs that a Muslim carries around is his aqeedah. There's nothing more important than that. Even if a person was to die and their aqeedah is sound, they're what? Inevitably their vote will be Jannah. Even if they're a sinner in the beginning, where they might have to be purified if their sins in the hellfire, wal-'iyadhu billah. But if they die and their aqeedah is sound, then their ultimate abode will be where? It'll be paradise. So the protection of that affair is the utmost of importance, right? Fine. So Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah is saying here, the greatest of dangers is the people who believe to be the people of the truth, even though they're not. That's the reason why his focus was on what? Them specifically. Number one, the people who? Ta'wil. Who are the people of Ta'wil? He's talking about the Ash'ari. The majority of the books of Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah is refuting the Ash'ari. Majority. You'll find that even Ibn al-Qayyim put in his poetry in Nuniyah, praising which was from the greatest books of Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, and his refutation against the Ash'ari is called تعارض العقل والنقل. تعارض العقل والنقل. Ibn al-Qayyim puts in his poetry, Nuniyah. He says, وَقَرَأُوا كِتَابَ الْعَقْلِ وَالنَّقْلِ الَّذِي مَا فِي الْوُجُودِ مِثْلَهُ نَظِيرٌ ثَانِي. He said, read the book Al-Aql wal-Naql alladhi ma fil wujudi lahu nadhirun thani. The book was entitled Removing the Notion that the Mind Came to Oppose the Revelation. That's the name of the book. He said, rejecting or removing the doubt that the mind came to reject or oppose the revelation. Why did he entitle that? Because the Asha'ira believe that the mind is the what? Is the source of guidance, not what? Not the revelation. That's the reason why he entitled it with that title. Is it clear, everyone? Jane. So what he goes on to say, let's go on with the next statement. What do you say? Oh, now. He said, بِخِلَافِ هَؤُلَاء. He said, in contrast to these people, فإنهم تظاهروا بنص السنة في مواضع كثيرة وبصفة خاصة الأشاعرة زعموا كثيرا أنهم نصروا السنة في مواضع كثيرة ودافعوا عن السنة وصاروا خصوصا للمعتزلة علما بأنهم قد يتفقون مع المعتزلة في مواضع. The great Imam Shaykh Muhammad al-Jami, let's read the statement of Shaykh al-Islam first. He said, in contrast to these people, now he's speaking about the Asha'ira. He's saying that these people openly pretended that they were aiding the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ in a lot of places. But بِصِفَةٍ خَاصَّةٍ, specifically speaking about, who is he speaking about here in this context? The Asha'ira. The Asha'ira, and if you want to include in them, the Maturidiyya also. The Maturidiyya. The Asha'ira claim a lot, you'll find in a lot of places that they were aiding or giving victory to the Sunnah. And that they were defending it. Especially against the Mu'tazila. Not realizing that they actually agree with them in a lot of places. Number one, you'll find the problem with all of these groups is that they were combating each other with the same falsehood, which was affairs connected with the intellect. Right? As we know, you cannot combat falsehood with what? Falsehood. ما يمكن أن تدفع الباطل بالباطل. تدفع الباطل بالحق. You'll find that a person cannot fight fire with fire. You'll find that all of these groups were fighting what? Fire with what? Fire, even though they were feuding one another. What made the people of the Sunnah, the people that are upon Salafiyyah stand out is that they refuted falsehood with what? With the truth. Whereas you'll find that the Mu'tazila, for example, the Asha'ira, that they tried to refute the Mu'tazila, even though there's agreements with the Asha'ira with these groups, starting with the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila. For example, you'll find that the Asha'ira, that they agree with the Jahmiyyah in the negation of Allah being above the heavens. So they agree with them. Just as you'll know the agreements of the Asha'ira with the Mu'tazila in saying that the Quran is created. Because you'll find that the Mu'tazila say that the Quran is created. And likewise, the Asha'ira also say that the Quran is what? Created. So, what's the argument or the difference between them? Even though you'll find that these groups claim that they are the ones that are going against one another. Or for example, that the Mu'tazila is fighting the Jahmiyyah. Or for example, the Asha'ira is fighting the Mu'tazila. And the Asha'ira claiming that they are what? Aiding the Sunnah. He said when the affair was like this, especially during the time of Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, the biggest danger upon the Muslims in the lands where he was, what was prevalent amongst them is that the people adopted the belief of the Asha'ira due to the fact that the common folk believed them to be the people of the truth, even though they were not from them. So that was the biggest danger upon them. That's the reason why you'll find the majority of his books is rebuttaling them specifically. Is it clear, everyone? طيب, what he says, وَرَكَّزَ الشَّيْخُ الْإِسْلَامِ فِي الرَّدِّ عَلَى الْمُؤَوِّلَةِ But notice that he's called the Asha'ira what? Mu'awwila or Mu'awwili. People of what? False distortions or false interpretations, where they twisted the names and the meaning, or the names and the attributes of Allah Ta'ala. That's the reason why we'll find, like we said, that was his focus. However, what we want to accept from those books and those treatises that Shaykh al-Islam wrote was a book called Minhaj al-Sunnah. Minhaj al-Sunnah is a refutation against the Rawafid. The Rawafid is a deviant from the sect of the Shia. Kullu Rafidi Shi'i. Is it clear, everyone? Why are they called Rawafid? They're called Rawafid due to what happened with Zayd ibn Ali ibn Hussein ibn Ali. His name was Zayd ibn Ali ibn Hussein ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. And Zayd was the great-great-grandson of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And his grandfather was Hussein. Zayd ibn Ali ibn Hussein ibn Ali. At any rate, Zayd ibn Ali ibn Hussein, he went out against Hisham ibn Abdul Malik. So the army that was with Zayd ibn Ali criticized Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma. He criticized them, and they condemned them and spoke very ill of them. Until you'll find that Zayd ibn Ali, that he reprimanded them for that. He reprimanded them for that, put them in a place, and he prohibited them from doing that. Until they say, فَرَفَضُوهُ رَفَض. Until they refuse to accept it. So when they refuse, linguistically in the Arabic language, that goes back to the what? Word rafad. Rafad. Rafad is a linguistic meaning, means like to refuse or reject. Not like I didn't want it. I didn't want it. I didn't want it. I rejected it. Is it clear, everyone? He says, so the name remained with them due to the fact that they not want to accept that when Zayd ibn Ali ibn Hussein said to them, فَإِنَّهُمَا وَزِيرَا جَدِّي. Wazira Jaddi. We know that Zayd ibn Ali ibn Hussein ibn Ali, his grandfather also goes where? Back to who? Who's he go back to? His father his grandfather was Hussein. His grandfather was Hussein. Then Ali. Ahsan, that's what I wanted to get to. Because eventually his lineage goes back to the Masjid of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. Zayd ibn Ali ibn Hussein ibn Ali. His lineage also goes back to the Messenger of Allah. طيب. He said that verily Abu Bakr and Umar are the ambassadors or the Wazira Jaddi. The ambassadors or the two ambassadors of my grandfather. He's talking about the Messenger of Allah here in this context. So they rejected it and said, no, we still, reject them. To the point in these days you'll find even the Rawafid have a dua. They call it Dua al-Sanamain. Dua al-Sanamain. The dua of the two idols in the hellfire. And they're talking about Abu Bakr and Umar. They even have a poetry, or they have a dua where they said La'na Sanamain nar wa banatayhima. He said that the curse be upon the two idols of the hellfire and their two daughters. Who's the two daughters? Of Umar. Let's go back to Umar first. Who? Hafsa. Who's the daughter of Abu Bakr? No, not Isma. Aisha. So they're cursing them in their dua. It's called Dua al-Sanamain. Look it up online. It's called Dua al-Sanamain. Dua of the two idols. Are they speaking about who? Abu Bakr and Umar. But at any rate, Zayd ibn Ali said, you do not want to accept them? There's the two ambassadors of my grandfather, was the Messenger of Allah. They said, no, we reject it. So that's the reason why they were called, what do we want? Rawafid. Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah has a book called Minhaj al-Sunnah. Minhaj al-Sunnah is a refutation against them. But however, the majority of his book, the reason why I mention this is just a side benefit. It's the Talad, به في بعض الأحيان نستطرد. But anyway, you'll find that the Minhaj al-Sunnah is talking about the Shia. However, the point we're trying to mention is that the majority of the treaties of Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah focuses where? On who, everyone? The Asha'ira. Even though he has rebuttals against a lot of different groups, from the Christians, from the Jahmiyyah, a lot of different groups. But his main focus was who? It was on the Asha'ira, due to the fact that they were the big danger upon the Muslims of his time. Because the people would think that rather they used to think that they were the ones who was giving aid to the Sunnah and the truth. That's the reason why the people had embarked upon accepting it. That's the reason why Shaykh al-Islam took time out to really clarify their errors. So the people can truly embark upon accepting what is the clear truth, not a perverted understanding or deviated understanding. طيب. So then he goes on to say, وَهُمْ فِي الْحَقِيقَةِ. No, I'm sorry everyone, let me go back. وَهُمْ فِي الْحَقِيقَةِ لَا لِلْإِسْلَامِ نَصَرُوا وَلَا لِلْفَلَاسِفَةِ كَسَرُوا. Allah Akbar. He said, these people in truth, who are the people of distorted meanings or false interpretations, he's talked about the Mu'tazila, and he's talked about the Asha'ira and the Maturidiyah. That's what he's speaking about. He's talking about the Mu'tazila and the Asha'ira and the Maturidiyah. The Maturidiyah is similar to the Asha'ira, brothers. Person might say, what about who's the Maturidiyah? The Maturidiyah, this comes back to the individual's name, Abdullah al-Maturidi. Anyway, we'll talk about that, that's going to come. Just to throw it out there. They're just like the Asha'ira. Rather, you'll find that they say the Maturidiyya is the Shaqiqatu al-Asha'ira, or the Shaqiq al-Asha'ira. They're like the blood brother of the Asha'ira. You'll find that they even increase them, as you'll find that the Asha'ira, the majority of them, affirm, for example, those 7 characteristics of Allah, which is what we meant with hayatu wal kalam wal basar sam'un iradatun ilmun wa qadar. However, they increase an 8th characteristic, which is called sifatu takween, the characteristic of formation. But we'll talk about that later. But at any rate, know for sure that the Maturidiyya and the Asha'ira are basically what? The same. But the same foundation of using the intellect as a what? Source of guidance over what? The revelation. That's all. Is it clear, everyone? طيب. So he's saying, Ahl al-Ta'wil, such as the Mu'tazila and the Asha'ira and the Maturidiyya. Now listen what he says. Notice that all these people, the Mu'tazila, the Asha'ira and the Maturidiyya, all of them claim that they were given victory to what? To Islam. And all of them claim that they defended so-called Islam. And that they were defending the truth. And that they were what? They were clarifying and calling the people to what was right. And they were rebuttaling those groups that were on something that was incorrect, right? However, what does Shaykh al-Islam say about them? Not for Islam did they give aid, nor did they what? Tear down philosophy. Why? Because all of them were using philosophy as their basis. Is it clear what Shaykh al-Islam is saying there? He said all of them were refuting one another with the same basis, with the same premises, with the same foundations. Ultimately, what it's going to lead to is more falsehood. Why? Because the whole the fundamentals are corrupt. So the basis of what you're trying to refuse is also going to be what? Corrupt. So that's the reason why he said what? Not for Islam did they give aid, nor to philosophy did they break down. وَلَا لِلْفَلَاسِفَةِ كَسَرُوا. They didn't do this, nor they achieved this, nor did they achieve that. He said, أنهم عارضوا الفلاسفة بدعواهم ولكن الخبير بحال القوم الذي نازل الجميع وخاصمهم وناظرهم لا للإسلام نصر لأن الإسلام ينحصر فيما كان عليه الصحابة وهم قد خالفوا الصحابة في هذا الباب. You'll find that the great Imam Shaykh Muhammad Ahmad Jami says, excellent explanation. He said that they say that they was opposing the philosophers. However, the one who has insight, who's the expert for the situation or the condition of these people, he says you'll find that when they debated with all of them and that they discussed the affairs with all of them, that ultimately this is their result. They didn't give aid to Islam, nor did they break down the philosophy. Why? Because Islam is only restricted in what the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was upon with his companions. That's it. Is it clear, everyone? He said, for verily, indeed, these people had opposed the companions. They opposed them in this affair. What is the affair he's speaking about? The names and the attributes of Allah. He said, for verily, they did not tear or break down the philosophers. However, he said they did oppose them, somewhat of an opposition for them. However, they did not what? Attain their goal as far as totally demolishing and breaking down falsehood in all of its ways. وَرَدَّ كَيْدَهُمْ مِنَ الْإِسْلَامِ لَا يَبْقَوْنَ عَلَى ذَلِكَ لِأَنَّهُمْ يَسْتَعْمِلُونَ الْعَقْلِيَاتِ. Because they were using affairs that was connected with the intellect to so-called refute one another or so-called raise the banner of the truth, which was incorrect. Now listen what he goes on to say. And this is where it's going to get a little slightly hard for everyone. Slightly. I think certain people will be easy, don't worry. Then we'll stop here inshallah. He said, وَلَكِنْ أُولَٰئِكَ الْفَلَاسِفَةِ أَلْزَمُوهُمْ الْمَلَاحِدَةِ الَّذِينَ يُنْكِرُونَ الْمَعَادِ يعني شؤون المعاد في الآخرة ويؤولون نصوص المعاد. I want to see if everyone can understand this point. If you understand this point, more than likely you'll be able to understand the other details that's going to come. Now, Shaykh al-Islam is going to embark upon what they call طريقة الإلزام. إلزام إلزام الحجة على خصمه. إلزام الحجة على خصمه. Now he's going to bring another method in order to establish the proof upon the individual who's in opposition. How? He's going to do it in a way in which he's going to take his enemy that he's so-called refuting, and how, based upon the principles that you're upon, you have to follow them. Because if you try to so-called combat them with your principles, it shows that you're basically what? Mutanaqid. You're basically contradicting yourself. So that means you have to follow them, because you're using the same principles. You understand? This is what he's about to do now. Is it clear what I'm saying so far? So now listen what he says. He said, الملاحدة الذين ينكرون المعاد ويؤولون نصوص المعاد ألزموا أهل التأويل أهل التجهير أهل التخيير والذين ينكرون نصوص المعاد ألزموا أهل التأويل بأن يسلكوا مسلكهم ويتفقوا معهم ولا يتناقضوا. قالوا الرسل جاءت بنصوص المعاد وجاءت بنصوص الصفات. أنتم أولتم نصوص الصفات ولم تؤولوا نصوص المعاد فيجب تأويل نصوص المعاد كما أولتم نصوص الصفات إذ لا فرق بين هذا وذاك ولعل ما جاء في نصوص المعاد أعظم وأكثر وأوضح ما جاء في نصوص الصفات أكثر ومع ذلك تجرأتم على تأويل نصوص الصفات ولم تؤولوا نصوص المعاد. Let me start with the first part. He said, those who are upon great deviation of Malahida, he said, there are people, of course, those groups out there that deny the day of resurrection. Yunkirun shu'un al-ma'ad, or the affairs of ma'ad. Ma'ad meaning the affairs of the hereafter. Or some of them say it's a frame of mind. Some of them say so many different calls of shaitan out there, so many satanic calls about the affairs of the day of resurrection. From them, they say it's not real. Some of them say it's allegorical, or it's metaphorical, or it's a state of the mind. Or some of them now they go on to say there is no paradise in hell. Those are old fairy tales, old bedtime stories. Oh, those are the times, the ancient times. You got to be kidding me. Rather, that's the problem. And some of them will just say, some of them will say, hell is here. Hell is on earth. We've heard that one too. Especially, I think they call them 5%ers, which to me was a religion of New York. The majority of the 5%ers were just in New York. But anyway, they'll say that hell is here on earth, or paradise is here on earth, to the end of it, right? But So these people, using their intellects, deny the affairs of what? The day of resurrection. Also, you'll find that some of them deny they will be eating and drinking in paradise. That's another affair. That's also a great mistake. That they say, oh, those affairs, what is your hujjah? Your hujjah is saying our minds don't accept that. Our intellects do not accept that. That they'll be eating and drinking in hereafter. Or in paradise, eternally. Because our minds deny that. All these are affairs of denial of what? Whether it be istakfaru istaqallu. Whether it be them denying it totally or denying some of it. All of them, or all these groups have their portion of denial of affairs concerning what? The hereafter. Fine. These people that now take the affairs of the narrations concerning the hereafter, they come to the people of Ta'wil. Because all of them are using the same principles. And people who claim that the Messenger of Allah was also deficient in his knowledge, and that he had jahl. And the people who we spoke about a couple of lessons ago, called the people of imagination. Right? So listen. Those people who deny the text of the affairs concerning the hereafter use the same principles in order to establish the proof against the people of false interpretations. That is binding upon you to accept what we're upon and to embark the same what? Path. How? He says it's incumbent upon you to agree with us. Because if you don't, you fall into being contradictive. So this is what they say. قالوا الرسل جاءت بنصوص المعاد. The prophets, all of them, came in their books talking about what? Affairs concerning what? The hereafter. Right? Okay, no doubt. Also, all the prophets and messengers came with affairs and texts talking about Allah's names and attributes. Right? Yes, that's absolutely correct. Now keep in mind, Ahl Sunnah, we're not in this right now. The people of the truth. He's talking about how the corrupt principles that you'll find means it binding upon you to follow those other people who are upon falsehood. Is it clear what I'm saying? Fine. So now, this is what Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say. Antum awwaltum nusus al-sifat. You misinterpreted and came with false distortions in the text about Allah's names and attributes. Right? And you did not fall into ta'wil or falsely distorting the meanings of the affairs concerning the hereafter. Are you with me so far? Now listen, it's obligatory upon you to falsely interpret and distort the meanings of the affairs of the hereafter, just as you also distorted the meanings of the names and attributes of Allah. Hence, there's no difference between that one and that one. Why? Because all of it is using what? My intellect. No difference between this one or that one. He said, rather, maybe perhaps what comes in the affairs of the text and the ma'ad is greater and bigger and more clear than the affairs of what came in regards to the sifat. More. He says, وَمَعَ ذَلِكَ. Despite of that, you had the audacity to twist the meanings of the names and attributes of Allah. But how come you do not distort the meanings in the texts pertaining to the affairs of the hereafter? Taking consideration that the Malahida, the people of first, did not believe in that. Now listen to this part. This is where it gets deep. The people of the first did not believe in that. Or they did not do that. What is he talking about? He's saying that the mushrikeen during the time of the Messenger of Allah, I'm going to stop here. And I'm going to keep this in your mind for the class. The Messenger of Allah, when he came to the mushrikeen of the Arab in Quraysh, they did not. You'll find in the text that comes in Kitab al-Sunnah that they denied what? The day of resurrection. But they did not deny the names and the attributes of Allah. They did not reject the message of Allah and the affairs is connected with the what? The names and attributes. Example. You'll find in the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the last ayah, which is in Surah Al-Isra. It's from the last ayah, not the last ayah, but the last page. Go back to it. It's in Surah Al-Isra. قُلْ ادْعُوا اللَّهَ أَوْ ادْعُوا الرَّحْمَنَ أَيَّمَّا كَانُوا فَلَهُ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَلَا تَجْهَرْ بِصَلَاتِكَ وَلَا تُخَافِتْ بِهَا وَابْتَغِ بَيْنَ ذَلِكَ سَبِيلًا. Allah Ta'ala said in his book, He said, قُلْ ادْعُوا اللَّهَ أَوْ ادْعُوا الرَّحْمَنَ. For the affairs of what they deviated in was not the denial of Allah's names and attributes. It was in the affairs of multiple what? Deities in regards to this particular matter of Ar-Rahman and the ayah, which is the Surah Al-Isra. So they said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has different names. So that must mean there be what? Different deities. The point of the matter is, they never argue with the message of Allah, nor did they falsely interpret the names and attributes, nor did they what? Distort them. That was an affair that anyone what? Fell into. Nor during the time of the previous revelations from the Christians and the Jews from the past. The only thing that they ascribed to Allah was deficiencies in regards to those certain names, not the actual name itself by distorting it or changing it. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book about the Jews, that the Jews said, وَقَالَتِ الْيَهُودِ يَدَ اللَّهِ مَغْلُولَةً يَدَ اللَّهِ مَغْلُولَةً غُلَّتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَلُعِنُوا بِمَا قَالُوا بَلْ يَدَاهُ مَبْسُوطَتَانِ يُنْفِقُ كَيْفَ يَشَاءُ. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the Jews, He said that the hands of Allah is tied up. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, may their hands be tied up. And may they be cursed for what they say. Rather, His two hands are what? Widespread. He spins how He wills. But based upon that, brothers and sisters, the Jews did not deny. If you notice in the ayah, what did the Jews affirm? They affirmed the hand of Allah. No. Did they say, no, it doesn't mean the hand. It means the two powers of Allah, or the power of Allah. Or it means the great ability of Allah. Or it means His power, or His two bounties, or His two blessings. Did they say that? No. They only ascribe to the actual attribute what? A deficiency. Not actually what? Falsely interpreting it. That's the point that Shaykh al-Islam is trying to make here. Is it clear or is it not clear? He said, this is what he's saying. So this is what he's saying. And also the great Imam Shaykh Muhammad al-Majid. He said, الملاحد الأولين لا يؤمن بهذا ولا بذاك لذلك استطاعوا إلزامهم ليتفقوا معهم هذه طريقة الإلزام. He said, the ملاحد الأولين, he said that they did not deny, of course, they denied the day of resurrection. But during the times of the past, as far as the Mushrikeen, during the time of the Arab, they rejected the day of resurrection. However, they did. I'm confused you. I'm sorry. Is everything okay? But he said the Malahid al-Awwali, they did not. The Malahid of the first, of those who deviated, of great deviation. He said they rejected, of course, the affairs pertaining to the hereafter, but they did, as far as in the names and attributes, they were sound. However, what we're trying to mention here, in this particular context, he said that those who are upon great deviation, due to the fact that they all were using intellectual type of basis or basis of their argument, they were going down to the people of what? That say that the day of resurrection, we don't believe in that, due to the fact our mind objected. It's incumbent upon you also, the same individuals who are upon that from the Asha'ira, that you have to agree with us due to the fact that we all are using our minds and our intellects for the same purpose. So in that group, in that way, they were able to what? Make them agree with them. If they didn't agree with them, it would make them look like they were what? Contradicting themselves. I'm going to stop here, inshallah. We'll continue next week. Because they're also talking about the affairs of the affairs of the body. That was another affair that we talked about last class. Remember we said there's different types of calls. Some of them will say that it's not a physical resurrection. All the nonsense. But we'll talk about that, like we said, next week, inshallah. We'll stop here. Any questions about the lesson, anyone? Anything?
You said the Malahida, that's from those who do
Al-Malahida comes from the word ilhad. Ilhad, the origin of it is the rejection of Allah's existence. But in other contexts, it can be used as people who are upon great deviation. But the origin of ilhad is denial or rejection of Allah's existence. But ilhad in certain contexts is what? Is considered great deviation. Due to the fact, all the devious sects from the Jahmiyyah, the Mu'tazila, and the Asha'ira have their portion of ilhad. The Jahmiyyah are the highest form of ilhad. Due to the fact that the ultimate goal of all of this is denial of Allah's existence. That's the ultimate goal. That's the reason why Shaykh al-Islam authored these books. Due to the fact that he was refuting, because he knew the ultimate goal of the belief, or the dangerous belief of these affairs, is ultimately it leads to the denial and rejection of Allah's existence. At the head of them was the Jahmiyyah. That's the reason why you'll find that the majority of the scholars from the Jahmiyyah, in their books, of them sitting confused, to the point where they left the fold of Islam because they had doubt concerning Allah's existence. Because once you reject all of the names and attributes, what does that mean?
His actual self.
You rejected his existence. Why? That's the reason why you'll find. What did we say this last week? This other. We said that the Jahmiyyah يعبدون عدما. يعبدون عدما وأهل الكلام يعبدون عدما أو المعطلة أو النفاة يعبدون عدما والمشبهة والممثلة يعبدون صنما وأهل السنة يعبدون إلها موحدا. He said that the Nufa, those who negate the names and attributes of Allah, they worship non-existence. And those who resemble Allah's creation worship what? Worship a statue, something created. They worship idols. And Ahl Sunnah, they worship ilahan muwahhadan. They worship a deity worthy of worship with those names and attributes that befits His Majesty. طيب. What if you notice in the statement, what did it say? That the people who negate the names and attributes, they worship what? Adaman. Nothing. So the Jahmiyyah, the ultimate goal was what? The denial of Allah's existence. Then you have the Mu'tazila, they have their portion of denial of Allah's existence also. It might not be like the Jahmiyyah, but still, they have a great portion of it. And then you have the Asha'ira who go down the ladder a little bit, even though they still have their portion of ilhad. They still have their portion of ilhad. Ultimately, is denying Allah, whether it be partially or totally. All of it ultimately is considered ilhad. It's a type of what? Atheism. All of it is a type of atheism. All of it. Jahmiyyah, I'tizal, Ash'ariyah, Maturidiyah, Kullabiyah, all of it is a type of atheism. Some of it is total atheism, and some of it is considered what everyone? Partial atheism. But the point of the matter is, it's considered what? Atheism. That's the reason why Shaykh al-Islam authored this book. Due to the fact that he knew the danger of it upon the Muslims, that when they adopted philosophy and they made it a source of guidance over the revelation, what it would lead to is what? Atheism. Denial and doubt concerning Allah, which is the most dangerous of all affairs. Because no one person can be religious and them having some doubt about Allah Himself. It's the most dangerous of all affairs. Is it clear to everyone? That's the reason why Shaykh al-Islam authored these type of books. Because you see the importance of it. Now you see it. So people who have knowledge understand why he took the time out to embark upon these affairs. I'm sorry. I was finishing my point.
So these type of people, are they considered as apostate? Did they clarify, the ulama clarify them?
The common folk from amongst them, I mentioned this in different lessons. The common folk from amongst them, we don't declare them to be out the fold of Islam. From the common folk, dependent on their source of deviation. Like, for example, it depends on the level. The ulama have examined the level of the deviation of the Muslims. Some of them are out the fold of Islam. Like, for example, the Ahmadiyya, those who follow Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani. You believe there's another prophet other than the Messenger of Allah, khalas. Done. Those type of people, their deviation is great to the point where they're outside the fold of Islam. Then you have some of the people from the Muslims, from the common Muslims in the Muslim world who are affected by the aqidah of the Shaykh, from the common folk. Those people, we can't say that they're kuffar. No. Due to the fact that either, number one, of the fact that they have what they call ulama usu, atharu fihim. The scholars of evil affected them. So that shubha, that doubtful matter, is what we use in order to excuse them, to say that they're still in the fold of Islam. But it's not to go out to, for example, a Muslim country, and you say, well, I see so-and-so, I heard him say that Allah is everywhere, khalas, kafir. Nah. Can't say that, can't do that. You understand what I'm saying? Until the proof is established. Then, like we said, you have to take your time and know how to establish it. And all those other conditions and prerequisites that come along with it. Is it clear? Anything else, anyone? طيب stop here. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.